The cheer erupted before I even heard my name. Some girl ahead of me in line, blonde, surrounded by family wearing matching t-shirts, had just walked across the stage and into a sea of camera flashes and proud, tearful eyes. I clutched my diploma, folder tighter, palms damp inside the sleeves of my black graduation gown, and stared down at the row of white folding chairs under the May sun. The chair I'd saved for my parents remained empty. I scanned the crowd again, hoping for a last-minute miracle. Maybe they'd changed their minds. Maybe the text from Mom last night was just her being dramatic, her way of letting me down easy before showing up anyway. But no, I knew it. I knew it in the silence of my phone, in the pit of my stomach, in the Facebook post from 20 minutes ago of her smiling next to a bowl of buffalo dip with the caption, "Super Bowl pre-party at the Andersons. Way better than any ceremony." I took a shaky breath as the line moved forward. My name echoed through the speakers. Hannah Elise Blake, Bachelor of Science in Economics, summa cum laude. I walked, alone, across a stage I had imagined 1,000 times. Not a single voice called out for me. No camera pointed my way. Just the dean's handshake and a photographer snapping a stage smile I could barely summon. The applause from my section was muted. Then I saw them, Lily and her parents, standing, clapping furiously from the side aisle. Her mom's eyes were red. Her dad was whistling through his fingers like it was the Olympics. They held a graduation lei made of fragrant white flowers. Lily rushed over after the ceremony, threw her arms around me, and draped the lei around my neck. "You're not alone," she whispered. I wanted to believe her. But when the quad turned into a festival of hugs and family photos, I drifted to the edge like a spectator at my own moment. Everyone was posing, parents fixing caps, little siblings holding signs that said, "We love you." Or, she did it, a grandmother in a wheelchair kissed her grandson's forehead. A dad lifted his daughter off the ground with pride in his eyes. I stood next to the administration building and cried into my sleeve. It wasn't just the absence. It was the history of absences. Every recital, every science fair, every award night where I'd stood under fluorescent lights, clutching ribbons while glancing into the crowd, and no one waved back. I stayed just long enough for Lily's family to take one photo with me. Her mom called me our second daughter and gave me a long motherly hug that smelled like lavender and laundry. Her dad squeezed my shoulder, then handed me a small gift bag with a card inside that read, "We see you. We're proud of you." The weight of those words hit harder than I expected. I thanked them, made up an excuse about meeting my parents for dinner, then walked briskly toward the parking lot. The further I got from the celebration, the harder it became to breathe. By the time I reached my car, the tears came freely. I sat in the front seat, still in my gown, still clutching the empty diploma folder, and screamed into the steering wheel. They didn't come. They really didn't come. For years of working 2 jobs, of eating stale cafe muffins and skipping meals to afford textbooks, of staying up until 2 a.m. in the library while everyone else went to parties. For years of proving I could do this without help. And the one moment I needed them to show up, not with money, not with gifts, just with their presence, they were too busy bringing taco dip to a party. I opened Facebook again, scrolled back to Mom's post. Super Bowl Sunday is better than any ceremony. The photo was taken at 12:18 p.m. That was the exact minute I walked across the stage. Something cracked deep inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Just silence. A heavy, hollow kind of silence that comes when a truth you've avoided finally sits down next to you and says, "This is who they are. Stop pretending otherwise." I didn't drive away right away. I sat there. Let the pain sink in. Let the silence speak louder than their excuses. And I promised myself this would be the last time I waited for them to show up. I grew up in a 1-story ranch house with chipping beige paint and a yard full of crabgrass in Springfield, Missouri, a place where ambition was treated like a bad attitude and dreaming too loud made you seem ungrateful. My dad, Carl Blake, worked construction jobs when the weather allowed, and sat in front of the TV with a beer when it didn't. My mom, Teresa, was a part-time receptionist at a dental clinic, though part-time often meant only when she felt like it, which depended more on reality show finales and shopping trips than anything else. Neither of them finished college. My dad barely made it out of high school and reminded us every Thanksgiving that school teaches you nothing the real world won't beat into you for free. Mom used to say things like, C's get degrees, while proudly bragging about her survival instincts over any actual academic record. Education wasn't something we were encouraged to pursue. It was something you escaped as soon as possible. But I was different, and I knew that from the moment I learned how to read. I used to hide under the covers with a flashlight and a library copy of Charlotte's Web when I was 6, carefully turning pages so the sound wouldn't alert my parents. I built a solar oven out of tinfoil and a pizza box in 3rd grade, not for homework, but because I saw it once in a book and wanted to see if I could make s'mores. I once used my allowance money to buy used science kits at garage sales and created my own experiments in the garage. When I won the school science fair in 3rd grade, they called all the parents to attend the ceremony. I waited, proudly standing by my trifold board titled Photosynthesis, more than just green leaves. But my dad had a poker night, and Mom said she didn't want to drive in the rain. I took my little trophy home myself on the school bus. It rolled around in my backpack like it meant nothing to anyone but me. In middle school, I made honor roll every semester. At one recognition ceremony, I scanned the auditorium while they called my name, only to see empty chairs where my parents should have been. I walked off the stage alone, clutching my certificate and pretending not to notice the dad beside me lifting his son onto his shoulders. In high school, I became valedictorian. I worked hard for it, obsessively hard. I studied in the library before and after school, skipped every party, and tutored classmates for extra credit. When I got the letter confirming my ranking, I told Mom during dinner. Her response? Do we have to sit through that boring ceremony? Can't they just mail you the diploma? I still remember the sound of the TV blaring behind her. She didn't even look up from her plate. I wrote my college essays at the kitchen table while she shouted at contestants on The Bachelor from the living room. When I practiced my speech for the scholarship committee, she told me to lower my voice because she couldn't hear the show. So I learned early how to hide my excitement, to celebrate my wins in private, to expect nothing. And even though I kept trying, part of me always knew what they valued. And it wasn't me. My junior year of high school, I secretly applied to 17 colleges. My guidance counselor helped me find fee waivers because I couldn't afford the application costs. I hid the acceptance letters in a shoebox under my bed. When I got the envelope from University of Michigan, my dream school with a 60% scholarship offer, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried silently for 20 minutes. Then I rehearsed how I would tell them. I practiced my tone, tried to guess how they'd respond, hoped maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me. That night, over meatloaf, I carefully explained the scholarship, the university's reputation, the cost breakdown I'd spent weeks researching. My dad kept chewing and said, college is a waste. My buddy's son went for 2 years and now stocks shelves at Aldi. Should have just worked straight out of high school. Mom nodded, but her first question was, so you'll still live at home, right? To help with the dishes. My breath caught. I laughed nervously, thinking she must be joking. She wasn't. I spent the next 3 months convincing them college wouldn't bankrupt us. I applied for federal aid, found more scholarships, planned out my part-time work strategy. I even printed out spreadsheets, color-coded, budgeted, annotated with side notes. When move-in day came, they helped to load my things into our old Dodge Caravan. Dad complained about gas prices the entire 2-hour drive. Mom warned me not to waste money on those overpriced hoodies with the school logo. They dropped me off in front of my dorm, gave me a quick side hug, and were gone before I even got my keys. I watched their van pull away through the glass doors of the check-in hall, surrounded by other families carrying luggage and lamps, parents hugging their kids, some already crying. I stood alone, holding my duffel bag, and whispered to myself, "Make it count." Because I knew whatever I earned here, whatever I became, would have to be without them. The first semester hit me like a freight train. University of Michigan was nothing like high school. Professors expected you to read entire chapters before lecture, participate in discussions, and ask questions no one had even taught you how to ask. I was drowning in assignments by the second week. That's when I picked up my first job, working at the campus cafe 5 evenings a week. By mid-semester, I was working 30 hours weekly while juggling 18 credits. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My days were a grid of overlapping commitments: lectures, readings, shifts behind the counter, study groups, library nights. I set alarms to remind myself to eat. Sometimes I forgot anyway. My roommate, Aria, a theater major from California with a collection of silk scarves and a habit of singing show tunes while brushing her teeth, initially thought I hated her. One night, she found me asleep at my desk with my face in a pile of microeconomics notes. She placed a granola bar beside me and said, quietly, "You work like you're trying to outrun something." I didn't reply, but she wasn't wrong. Still, despite everything, I loved it. The lectures, the late-night debates, the new world of people who saw education as a door instead of a burden. I found my people, Ja, a chemistry major from Taiwan who made the best dumplings in her tiny dorm rice cooker. Maddie, an urban planning student who protested climate policy on weekends. And Miguel, an architecture major who swore his models looked better at 3 a.m. with lo-fi music playing. But none of this ever made it home. Freshman year, I called every Sunday. I'd start off bubbling with stories about the time I nailed my first econ exam, or when I led a class debate and the professor used my point as an example. But each time, the conversations veered elsewhere. My mom interrupted once to talk about our neighbor getting new granite countertops. Another time, my dad asked if I was spending too much on books and suggested I could Google that stuff for free. After a while, I stopped calling so often. By sophomore year, the check-ins were once a month. I'd text before midterms. They'd reply 2 days later with something vague like, "Good luck," or "Make sure to sleep." The only time they reached out unprompted was when Dad's truck broke down and he asked if I could spot them $200 until payday. I sent it, then worked an extra shift to make rent. That year, I took on a second job as a research assistant for Professor Sharma. 20 hours a week spent transcribing interviews and coding survey data. My calendar looked like a war plan. I ate leftovers from the cafe and memorized every food pantry schedule near campus. I wore the same 3 sweaters all winter and stitched up holes in my boots with dental floss. But I kept going. Junior year, I joined the First Gen Scholars Network and eventually became its treasurer. We hosted workshops for FAFSA help and emotional support groups for students navigating imposter syndrome. I spoke to freshmen who looked like I had looked just 2 years earlier, tired, unsure, desperately hoping it would all be worth it. And somehow, I still maintained a 3.9 GPA. My parents visited campus exactly twice. Once during freshman orientation because the school made it mandatory, and once sophomore year when they were driving to visit Mom's cousin in Ohio and decided to stop for lunch. Both times, they spent the entire visit complaining about parking prices and asking when I'd be done so I could start a real job. Meanwhile, I watched Aria's parents drive 6 hours to watch her perform in a 2-scene student play. They sent care packages with her favorite teas and little notes that said, "We're proud of you." Miguel's mom sent him soup recipes and called before every midterm. Gia's dad printed out her midterm scores and taped them to the fridge in Taiwan. The contrast was painful, but I buried it. I told myself I didn't need them to be proud. I just needed to succeed. Senior year came fast, wrapped in thesis deadlines, internship interviews, and final projects. I landed a prestigious internship at a social impact investment firm in downtown Ann Arbor. My supervisor, Natalie, took me under her wing and said, "You've got sharp instincts and number sense. You'd be perfect in Portland. We're opening a new office soon." Portland, thousands of miles from home. I wanted it more than anything. By Thanksgiving, she had made me an offer. Full-time analyst, start date June 1st. When I told my parents, Dad said, "Why would you go all the way across the country for a job? Portland's full of weirdos." Mom said, "You know it rains all the time there, right?" I smiled. I nodded. I hung up. Then I booked them a hotel for graduation weekend and reserved a table at an Italian restaurant that served handmade pasta and had just the right amount of twinkle lights. I spent 2 weekends working back-to-back shifts to cover the bill. I picked out the photo package with the best lighting options. I printed out the map and the seating chart, marked it in pen. Section C seats, 12 and 13. I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time they'd show up. 6 weeks before graduation, I called home like I always did on Sundays. The countdown had begun. 42 days until the ceremony. Mom answered on speaker while folding laundry. I could hear Wheel of Fortune playing in the background. She seemed distracted but upbeat. "We already asked off work," she said. "Dad's even thinking about renting a nicer car for the drive up." I smiled at the thought. Maybe they were finally getting it, finally recognizing that this mattered, that I mattered. I told them about my cap and gown order, about my thesis defense coming up, about the pasta restaurant I'd booked for our graduation dinner. "They do a handmade butternut squash ravioli," I said, almost giddy. "I'll cover the bill. It's my treat." "That's sweet, honey," Mom replied, "but don't go overboard. We're fine with Applebee's." I let it slide. 5 weeks out, I texted her the hotel reservation confirmation. I'd put the $379 charge on my already maxed out student credit card. She responded with a thumbs up emoji, and "I will double check with Dad about gas money." That was the first twinge of unease. A week later, I called again, this time while walking back from the economics building. My phone was pressed to my ear as I stepped around patches of dandelions sprouting through the sidewalk. "By the way," she said casually, "there might be a little hiccup with the graduation weekend." My heart paused mid-beat. She continued, "The Andersons, you remember them from the neighborhood? They're throwing their annual Super Bowl party that same weekend. And they specifically asked us to come this year. You know how much Dad loves their buffalo chicken dip." I stopped walking. "Mom, the ceremony is at noon. The game doesn't even start until 6. You'd be done by 2. You'd have more than enough time to make the party." "Well," she hesitated, "their pre-party starts at 2, and it's almost a 5-hour drive back, so we'd have to leave right after. And you know how Dad gets with traffic." I gripped the phone tighter. "You're saying you might skip my graduation for a football party?" "Oh, don't be dramatic, Hannah," she laughed. "We're still figuring it out. Nothing's decided. Let me talk to your father." But her tone, it told me everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my mattress, staring at the ceiling. The shape of my graduation cap hanging on the closet door, casting a shadow like a question mark. Over the next few days, I sent reminder texts. Updates. "Picked up my gown. Only 2 weeks left. Can't wait to see you both." Each message received either a delay in response or a short, non-committal "we'll see." Then came the night before the ceremony. I'd just finished ironing my dress shirt and setting out my heels. My roommates were out with their families, dinners, hugs, laughter echoing down the hallway. My phone buzzed at 10:37 p.m. It was a call from Mom. I picked up, hope clawing for oxygen. "Hi, sweetie," she began, her voice artificially cheerful. "Listen, I'm so sorry, but we just can't make it tomorrow." Silence. She filled the space. "Your dad threw his back out lifting something heavy this morning. I'd have to drive alone, and you know I hate highways. Plus, the Andersons are really counting on us to bring the layered taco dip, and I'd hate to let them down." I sat on the edge of my bed, gripping the comforter so tightly my knuckles turned white. "You're not coming at all." "It's just one ceremony, honey. They're all the same. Long speeches, everyone dressed alike. We're so proud of you, you know that. Maybe someone can take a video. Or maybe they'll sell a DVD after." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "Sure," I whispered. I hung up before my voice cracked, then sat in the dark for 27 minutes, completely still. At 11:04 p.m., I allowed myself exactly 30 minutes to cry. Not the kind of crying where you hope someone hears and comforts you. The quiet, exhausted kind, like leaking grief after years of being careful not to spill. Then I washed my face, set my alarm for 7 a.m., and told myself again that I could do this alone. The morning of graduation arrived under a clear blue sky. Sunlight poured through the blinds of my tiny off-campus apartment as my alarm buzzed at 7 a.m. I sat up slowly, knees pulled to my chest, and stared at the neatly pressed gown hanging on my closet door. My heart felt heavy, but my mind was strangely still, like everything had already been decided. I checked my phone, no messages from my parents. Instead, there were texts from Lily, from my professor, from friends and my thesis group. "You did it! Proud of you. See you soon." I replied with emojis, smiley faces, exclamation points, and none of it felt real. I forced down half a piece of toast, though it tasted like paper. I curled my hair, applied makeup with trembling hands, and clipped my honor cords into place. As I pinned my cap securely, I practiced smiling in the mirror until it looked believable. At 10 a.m., I walked to campus with my ticket holder clutched tight, still holding the 3 tickets I'd ordered. One for Dad, one for Mom, one spare just in case. I'd called them both again that morning. Straight to voicemail. The quad had transformed into a sea of folding chairs and fluttering purple banners. Families swarmed the entry, snapping photos, laughing, adjusting ties and corsages. Grandparents tottered across the grass, refusing to miss the moment. Little brothers wore shirts with glittery "Sis graduated" slogans. Proud dads took pictures from every angle. Moms dabbed tears from their cheeks. I stood at the edge of it all, invisible. Then I saw Lily rushing toward me, her parents right behind. "Emma, my parents brought you a lei too," she beamed, my name tangled with joy in her voice. She wrapped fragrant white flowers around my neck and hugged me tight. Her mom gave me a soft, lavender-scented hug. "We're so proud of you, honey. Lily tells us everything you've done. You're amazing." I couldn't speak. I just smiled. It felt like swallowing broken glass. I made an excuse to slip away into the graduate check-in area, my heart pounding. Professor Diaz helped us line up alphabetically. My palms were sweating, my throat dry, but I held steady, one foot in front of the other. Then, 5 minutes before my name was called, my phone buzzed in my gown pocket. Not a call, a Facebook notification. Teresa Blake posted a new photo, Super Bowl Sunday prep. I opened it. There they were, my mother, my father, laughing in our old kitchen, holding trays of deviled eggs and layered dip. The counter behind them was covered in snacks, beer bottles, red Solo cups. The timestamp read 12:17 p.m., the exact moment I would be crossing the stage. My vision blurred. The microphone called Hannah Elise Blake, Bachelor of Science in Economics, summa cum laude. I stepped forward as rehearsed. Smile. Shake hands. Receive diploma. Smile wider for the camera. Walk back with dignity. Inside I was hollow. As I returned to my seat, applause rang out, not for me, but for the next name. I clutched the diploma holder, so hard my fingers ached. My mouth stayed fixed in a smile I couldn't feel. After the ceremony, I let Lily and her parents pull me into family photos. "Get in here, Blake," her dad said, slinging an arm over my shoulders. "Honorary daughter today." I smiled. I thanked them. I excused myself. I told everyone I was meeting my parents for dinner. I wasn't. Instead, I walked across campus, heels in hand, cap tilted by the wind, until I reached the parking lot. I climbed into my 15-year-old Honda, still in my gown and broke. Tears I'd held back all morning spilled out in heavy waves. I pounded the steering wheel, whispered things I couldn't say aloud, and finally just sat there. When I could breathe again, I checked my phone. One new message from Mom. "So, how did your graduation thing go? Did they take good pictures?" No apology, no explanation, just that. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, "It was important to me. I really wanted you and Dad there. It hurt that you chose a party instead." Her reply came fast. "Don't be so sensitive, Hannah. These ceremonies are all the same anyway. Your cousin Becky didn't even go to hers. It's not like you performed brain surgery. The party was fun. The Andersons had this amazing 7-layer dip." I put the phone down. It took everything in me not to scream. Instead, I cleaned my apartment in silence that night, sat in the dark, ate cold pasta from the fridge, packed 2 boxes, folded my gown, and tucked it into the bottom drawer. The next morning, I called my university's counseling center. 1 month post-grad access still applied. I was connected with Dr. Mason, a calm, gray-haired woman with a voice like warm flannel. I told her everything, from third-grade science fairs to missed graduations, from poker nights to chicken dip. She listened without interrupting, then said gently, "What you've described isn't forgetfulness or disorganization. It's a long-term pattern of emotional neglect. And that kind of pain, it's real." She paused. "And the question now is, what boundaries do you need to build to protect yourself?" For the first time in my life, someone had asked me that. I didn't have the answer yet, but I knew this. I couldn't keep giving to people who only showed up to take. 6 months into my new life in Portland, I was finally learning what it meant to live without tiptoeing around someone else's moods. My mornings began with coffee on a small balcony overlooking the city's treetops. I walked to work at Technovate, where I was no longer just another intern, but a full-time financial analyst trusted with real projects. I had friends now, Jordan, Aisha, Deepika, people who checked in, people who showed up. Then, on a Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Mom. I let it ring. I wasn't ready. Later that afternoon, I played the voicemail while walking home in the drizzle. "Hey, sweetie. We've been thinking, maybe it's time we came out to visit. Your father found some reasonable flights, and we've never seen Portland before. We thought maybe next month." I stopped walking. Of course they wanted to visit, now. After 6 months of silence. After I'd started building a life of my own. Still, part of me ached at the thought. I wanted to believe it was about reconnection. That maybe, finally, they'd realized what they'd missed. I replied the next day, carefully neutral. "If you'd like to visit, I can recommend a hotel nearby. I won't be able to host overnight, but we can meet for meals and sightseeing." Mom replied, "Oh, that's too bad. Hotels in the city are expensive. We thought we could save money by staying with you." I repeated my boundary. "I don't have the space. 1 bedroom, small apartment. Not an option." Eventually, we settled on a weekend. 3 nights. Friday through Monday. The week they were due to arrive, I met with Dr. Chen, my therapist in Portland, who had been helping me since month 2. We rehearsed scenarios. What to say, what not to say, how to recognize guilt traps before I stepped into them. "This is your space now," she reminded me. "You get to set the terms." Friday morning arrived with rain and a sharp chill. I met them at their hotel lobby, a mid-range place near Pioneer Courthouse Square. My mother looked thinner than I remembered, with her hair dyed a shade too dark, lipstick slightly smeared. Dad had gained weight, his old company polo strained at the seams. The hugs were awkward, polite, hollow. Immediately the complaints began. The flight was cramped. The cab ride here was outrageous. Can't believe the hotel doesn't even offer free breakfast. I nodded, smiled, checked my watch. We had lunch at a seafood place near the water. I picked it because they had good reviews and a simple menu. Well, I tried to talk about my job, about the green bond portfolio I'd just helped restructure. Dad interrupted to say, "This chowder's overpriced for the size." Mom leaned in. "Hannah, you should have warned us Portland restaurants don't have normal portions." When the check came, they both stared at it like it was in ancient Greek. Dad gestured toward me. "Well, you're the one with the fancy corporate job now, right?" I paid, silently. Saturday was more of the same. Pike Place Market, the aerial tram, a walk by the river. Mom refused to wear comfortable shoes and complained the whole time. Dad made offhand comments about hipster cities and liberal nonsense. By dinner, I was exhausted. We sat in a cozy Italian place, tucked away on a quiet street with candlelit tables. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment they softened. Instead, after the appetizers, Dad leaned forward. "We wanted to run something by you," he said, tone suddenly serious. "You remember Johnson from my old construction crew? His brother-in-law's starting a property business. They've got a solid plan, flipping homes in upstate Missouri." I blinked. "Oh," I said carefully. "They're looking for early investors," he continued. "Initial buy-in is just $5,000, but returns could be huge. And with your background, you could help with the paperwork side. It's a smart use of that degree of yours." I stared at them. Mom chimed in. "We thought it could be something the family does together. Reconnect a little, you know." I put down my fork. Slowly. "So, this visit was about money?" They both looked offended, genuinely confused by the question. "No." Mom gasped. "Of course not. We came to see you." "But you haven't asked about my life," I said evenly. "You haven't mentioned my promotion, or my friends, or anything I've built here. But you've complained about prices since you landed. And now you're asking for $5,000. Dad's jaw tightened. "We flew across the damn country, Hannah, after you left without a word." I took a breath. "Steady. I left because you didn't come to my graduation. You didn't even try. You chose a football party. And the first time you contacted me afterward was to ask for money to fix the kitchen." Mom's face paled. "We're your parents," she hissed. "You owe us some respect." "No," I said quietly. "Respect isn't owed. It's earned. And it goes both ways." Dad shoved his chair back. "If that's how you feel about family, maybe we shouldn't have come at all." I looked him in the eye. "Maybe you shouldn't have." I stood, walked to the host stand, and paid the bill without another word. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, cold, steady. I didn't offer them a ride back. Back in my apartment, I made tea with trembling hands. My phone buzzed with a stream of messages. "How dare you embarrass us like that after everything we've done for you? You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for us putting a roof over your head. We need a ride to the airport tomorrow. Cab prices here are robbery." My reply was simple. "There's a light rail station 3 blocks from your hotel. It goes directly to the airport. $3.25 per person." Then I silenced notifications and stared out at the blinking city lights through the fogged glass of my window. The next morning, they checked out early. No goodbye, no knock at my door. Just one final text from Mom that read, "We changed our flight. Headed home a day early, since clearly you don't want us here." I stared at the message for a full minute. Then I deleted it. No tears, no guilt, just space. In the days that followed, I braced myself for the emotional aftershock. I expected the old reflexes to come roaring back. The spiral of second-guessing, the desperate urge to apologize for making them uncomfortable. But it never came. Instead, I felt something else, relief. Their absence, once so suffocating, now felt like breathing room. Like sunlight pouring through a cracked window I hadn't known was sealed shut. DR. Chin called it emotional recalibration. She said it happens when your nervous system finally understands you're no longer trapped in the cycle. For me, It looked like sleeping through the night for the first time in weeks, drinking coffee without a clenched jaw, smiling at emails from coworkers because I meant it. A few weeks later, I received another text from Mom. We arrived home safely, despite the inconvenience. My reply was brief. Glad you arrived safely. Nothing more, nothing less. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. Not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want them to hurt the way I had hurt. I just didn't want them to have the power to make me small anymore. 1 year after graduation, I marked the anniversary by driving solo to Mount Rainier National Park. I rented a trail map from a ranger station and hiked the Skyline Trail in slow, deliberate steps, letting the alpine wind tangle my hair, letting the silence wrap around me like a clean blanket. At one point, I sat on a rock outcropping overlooking a snow-dusted valley. The sky stretched wide with muted gold and blue. I took a deep breath, then whispered out loud. I did it. Not just college, not just the job. I had stepped out of a lifetime of emotional hunger and chosen to feed myself. In therapy, Dr. Chen had once said something that stuck with me. The hardest grief isn't losing what you had, it's accepting you never had it. That truth had carried me through the hardest days, not just after graduation, but long before. Through spelling bees with no audience, through empty folding chairs, through texts that never came. I had wanted love that showed up, and I got absence explained away as obligation. But here, on this mountain, I didn't feel hollow. I felt whole. My phone buzzed as I descended back toward the parking lot. A message from Jordan. Happy 1-year escape day. You still free for dinner tonight. I smiled. Jordan, Deepika, and Aisha had become more than friends. They were a family I got to choose. That night, at a dimly lit sushi place downtown, we toasted with green tea and sake. To Hannah, Jordan said, raising his glass, for knowing exactly when to walk away and when not to go back. I lifted mine, to building something better on our own terms. Back at my apartment later, I finally framed the photo from graduation day. Not the one I'd planned with my parents, not the one with empty chairs. This one had Lily's parents on either side of me, their arms wrapped tight around my shoulders. My eyes red from tears, but my smile real. I placed it on my bookshelf beside the books I'd once studied just to prove I was worth something. And then, for the first time, I posted it online, captioned simply. 1 year later, I understand walking across that stage alone wasn't failure. It was freedom.